You have probably petted a dog today, or seen one dragging someone down the street on a leash, or watched one completely lose its mind over a doorbell like it is the end of the world. Dogs are so woven into human life that we barely register how strange the relationship actually is. A predator, descended from an animal that hunted in packs and killed for a living, now sleeps at the foot of your bed and gets genuinely heartbroken when you leave the room for 5 minutes. Here is the question nobody really sits with. How did that happen? Not the cartoon version, a friendly wolf wandering up to a campfire, someone tossing it a bone, instant best friends forever. The real answer is stranger than that, and it involves thousands of years, a process nobody was actually running, and a completely different picture of who tamed whom. Let us kill the biggest myth first, because it needs to go. The idea of a human deliberately taming a wild wolf pup, raising it by hand, turning it into the first dog, is almost certainly wrong. And here is a fun way to test that claim yourself. Do not try it. Adult wolves raised by humans from birth still typically retain intense predatory instincts, unpredictable aggression, and a fundamentally different social structure than dogs, even after a lifetime around people. If early humans had grabbed wild wolf pups and tried to raise them by hand, the failure rate would have been brutal, the danger extreme, and the outcome unreliable generation after generation. That is not how you build a stable breeding population of an entirely new animal. So if it was not deliberate taming, what was it? The more likely answer is something researchers call self-domestication, and it flips the entire story on its head. Instead of humans choosing wolves, the wolves that became dogs may have effectively chosen us. Picture it. A human camp somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago, though the exact window is still debated. A fire burning through the night, bones scattered at the edges, scraps nobody bothered finishing. For a wild wolf, this pile of garbage was basically a buffet, if it could stomach getting close enough to a human campfire to eat it. Most wolves could not. Fear of humans kept them alive, and for good reason. But within any wolf population, there is natural variation, the same way there is variation in literally every trait a species has. Some wolves would have had slightly lower fear responses, slightly thicker skin around human activity. Those wolves could creep to the edge of camp, grab the leftovers, and get a free meal that the more anxious wolves never touched. That is it. That is the whole mechanism. No taming, no training, just a slightly braver wolf getting dinner. And this is where natural selection quietly takes over, without a single human making a decision. The bolder wolves ate better, survived better, had more pups. Generation after generation, this stacked the deck toward wolves with lower stress responses around people, essentially breeding tameness into the population by accident. No leashes, no treats, just proximity and calories, doing the work evolution usually needs thousands of deliberate choices to pull off. Here is the part that sounds almost too convenient to be true, except it has been proven, in real time, with a completely different animal. Starting in 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev began breeding silver foxes, selecting each generation for exactly one trait: calmness around humans. Nothing else. Not looks, not intelligence, just tolerance. Within a startlingly small number of generations, the foxes did not just get tamer. Their bodies started changing. Floppier ears, curlier tails, random patches of white and brown fur showing up, where wild foxes are uniformly colored. Their skulls even shifted shape. Some started wagging their tails and actively seeking out human attention, none of which anyone was selecting for on purpose. Let that sit for a second. Scientists tried to breed a calmer fox and accidentally built something that looks and acts unmistakably like a dog. What this tells us is that taming is not an isolated trait sitting by itself in an animal's genetics. It is tangled up with a whole cascade of other changes, likely linked to how stress hormones and developmental genes interact in mammals. Turn down the fear response, and a whole package of floppy-eared, tail-wagging, people-pleasing traits often comes along uninvited. Which means wolves could easily have self-domesticated through the exact same mechanism, just stretched across thousands of years instead of a few decades in a lab. So the picture that emerges is not humans capturing wild predators and slowly winning their trust. It is a population of proto-dogs quietly evolving on the margins of human camps, shaped by boldness and free calories, long before anyone was deliberately breeding anything. By the time humans started actively working with these animals, hunting alongside them, using them to guard camp, they were not taming wolves anymore. They were partnering with an animal that had already tamed itself. The genetics back this up in a way that is honestly a little disorienting. Ancient DNA suggests dogs and wolves split somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 years ago, which would make dogs older than agriculture, older than permanent settlements, older than farming villages, older than almost everything we usually associate with human civilization starting. Humans were still fully nomadic hunter-gatherers when this relationship began, which means dogs showed up to the party before the party even had a house. Once that early self-domesticated population existed, though, humans absolutely did start shaping it on purpose, and this is where deliberate breeding finally enters the picture. Early humans would have noticed which of these camp-tolerant proto-dogs were unusually good at specific jobs, better at sniffing out an approaching predator, better at tracking a wounded animal for miles, calmer around children, more alert at night when everyone else was asleep. Breeding, even informal and unplanned, from these standout individuals gradually locked in useful traits, building increasingly specialized populations suited to whatever the group actually needed. Which frankly explains one of the stranger facts about dogs today. A Chihuahua and a Great Dane are the same species. Let that sink in for a second, because on paper that is an almost absurd range of size and shape to squeeze out of one animal. That kind of diversity does not come from a single domestication event. It comes from thousands of years of layered selection, part accident, part intention, stacked on top of a foundation the wolves built themselves. And this was not charity. This was a genuine survival trade. Dogs offered better hunting success through tracking and flushing prey, early warning against approaching predators or rival groups, and in colder climates, extra body heat through the night. Humans did not adopt a wild animal out of kindness. They struck one of the most successful cross-species deals in the history of life on Earth, and it started, essentially, as an accident involving garbage. So how did ancient humans really create dogs? The uncomfortable, fascinating answer is, in the earliest stages, they did not. Not on purpose. A population of wolves domesticated themselves through generations of natural selection, favoring calm, bold individuals, and humans simply showed up to a partnership that was already well underway, then spent thousands of years sculpting it into everything dogs have become since. You did not tame the wolf. The wolf decided you were worth the risk. The dog sleeping at the foot of your bed tonight carries the genetic legacy of an ancestor bold enough to walk toward a human fire instead of running from it, tens of thousands of years ago, and lucky enough to pass that boldness on, generation after generation, until it became one of the deepest partnerships in the history of this planet. If dogs domesticated themselves through boldness and calm, which trait do you think your own dog inherited the most of? Drop it in the comments. If stories like this get your brain running the way they get mine running, subscribe. There is a lot more of this coming.